Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast here with Jessica Bun, and here we are with a new Only Murders in the Building Season 4 theory discussion. Now, there are a lot of different things to discuss with this season, but the fundamental one is pretty simple. Who is the killer? Who is the person really responsible? And here, we are going to look at none other than Glen Stubbins.
Yeah, this is a theory that Matt has brought up here at the
Mhm.
channel that is pretty solid and feels like it needs to have a deeper dive. So today's theory discussion is going to be all about Glenn.
Yeah.
Is he behind it all? Why is he getting such a prominent role all of a sudden in
Yeah.
the middle of the season? I mean, there's a lot of questions to ask here about this.
Yeah, and what makes Glenn so interesting right now as a suspect is, for starters, there are a ton of different suspects, and Glenn, he may be number one on my board right now, but there's both enough evidence and enough holes that I don't think we can sit here atop Glen Mountain and declare victory on this.
Here's the other theory that's adjacent to this,
Yeah.
which is that this isn't actually Glenn, that this
Mhm.
is actually Ben. And that's why the Irish accent is as bad as it is. And that the person that got killed last season is actually Glenn, that he had tapped in for Ben.
Yeah, let's talk about the accent. The accent is weird. I'm not sitting here and being like, I could do a better Irish accent than whether this is Ben Glenroy or just Paul Rudd, but it is
Coco here, she thinks she can do a better accent than both of us.
that may actually be true. It is the thing. Like I love Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd is great at many different things. The perfume segment and the Anchorman may be the funniest thing I have ever seen in my entire life. So I'm not a Paul Rudd hater, but maybe this accent just isn't for you, or maybe it's a part of the overall mystery. And that's the thing here with Glenn as we get further into it. There's so much to discuss.
That is the thing about the accent. Like, if this is really Ben pretending to be Glenn,
Yeah.
then it would make sense that this accent wouldn't be accurate.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. This is like Cobra. This is an
Right.
accent. We're not talking about Daniel Day-Lewis here, where
Right.
he has gone away for 6 months and lived in an Irish commune and has been practicing this with every person on the street.
Absolutely. But before we get further into this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We
Yeah.
are so close to hitting 67,000 subscribers here at the channel. It's a huge milestone
Yeah.
for Matt and I, and we would really appreciate your help to reach that milestone. Also, you get 3 Only Murders in the Building videos every single week. You get 2 on Tuesday, 1 on Wednesday. So hit that subscribe button and stick with us.
And if you guys do want to support us further, be sure to join our Patreon. We have a link in the description below. And over there on Patreon, we are currently covering exclusively The Penguin. So if you want to hear our thoughts about Oz Cobb and Sophia Falcone, this season's airing on HBO and Max, be sure to check that out. And thank you so much to our patrons who
Thank
have.
you. Okay, so let's talk about, is Ben and Glenn switched? Is it that Glenn actually died last season pretending to be Ben, and now this season Ben is pretending to be Glenn and he's out for revenge for what happened? This is definitely a popular theory that's out there online right now, and there's some smoke on that. I mean, all theories are still on the table here, guys. There are
Yeah.
no wrong theories at this point. Do I think that they've switched? I don't. I actually think that this is Glenn and that Glenn is probably the killer. I mean, we've had so much time with him. How is he not?
Yeah, I don't think that this is Ben. I tried to think it through, though. I tried to sort of be like, okay, if Glenn actually died last season, how would that have happened? And the idea I sort of came up here would be that Ben Glenroy knew that, he was poisoned and something terrible happened to him, and he
Yep.
didn't want to face everybody right after what happened. So he sent Glenn over there
Yeah.
to be a part of everything. And then Glenn acted like Ben, and then everything happened with Cliff, and then Glenn ended up being killed. And that this is Ben's sort of revenge mission. And is that possible in theory? Sure. Here's my problem with it is that Ben Glenroy, based on what we know, he had such an ego about him. I don't think he is going to be able to pretend like he is dead or be somebody else for a long period of time. I think at some point he's just going to be what, ha 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 ha, I got you guys. Look at how smart I am.
Yeah, I think that the idea that Glenn is out for revenge on what happened to Ben makes more sense.
Yeah, because there's a lot of different motives that we can sort of piece
Mhm.
together here. I mean, starting first and foremost with the obvious one, financially. I mean,
Yep.
based on what we have seen from Glenn so far, and it's been a relatively small amount of time that we've heard him talk about this, he's not exactly getting a lot of work after Ben died. And a lot of the ways this works for certain stunt people is if so much of your career is attached to one person,
Mhm.
sure, you can jump over to somebody else, but it doesn't happen immediately. And based on the timeline, not that much time has passed right now since when Ben Glenroy was killed.
Yeah. Or it could just be straight revenge that, we saw how close Sazz was with Charles,
Yeah,
sort of meeting Glenn and all the other stunt people that were in the bar, learning about how close they are to their people that they are being a stunt person for, and how much they rely on them and how much they admire them and care for them. It's almost like an extension of themselves.
yeah.
So, could he have been the person that was actually behind the sniper or hire somebody? Sure. I mean, there's stunt people out there that make really great money, like Zoe Bell, that are always working and always, making great money and would have money to be able to hire somebody. Also, as a stunt person, it's probable to think that maybe Glenn has a proficiency behind snipers or anything like that, that he wants to be a man of many talents when it comes to stunts, that he
Yeah.
can handle this, he can handle horses, he can handle, barrel rolls, he can handle a sniper, he can do it all. And that's why he's working as much as he is. So, could he actually just be someone who's able to use this? Yes.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Because I mean, what happens on a lot of these productions, especially if you're working on something where, you have to have a shot of somebody with a sniper, is like there are technical advisors who work on these shows who
Of
are
course,
often, like, I'm a former cop. I'm going to show you how to hold this, how to
yeah.
operate this. And I think he probably went through a lot of that training. So, in terms of having like the means to be able to do this and to convincingly pull it all off, that's there. But let's talk about the motive for a moment here, because you mentioned revenge,
Mhm.
but the idea is, who is the actual target of some of this? Because if it is Charles, then yeah, I think that revenge makes perfect sense because he's going to view, the trio and everybody else as sort of responsible for a lot of the stuff that went down here because Ben had a relationship with Charles and everything is really messy. But what if it was Sazz? What if
Mhm.
there's a motive here regarding Sazz that would make him want to take her out?
Yeah, and it sounds like there's something that was going on with Sazz. I mean, Sazz said she was getting out of the business because somebody was making her uncomfortable. And could that be Glenn then, who's jealous of Sazz, that Sazz has been working a long time, that not only has Sazz been working as Charles,
Hmm.
but now we know that she's also working as Scott Bakula. So she's
Yes.
able to continue working on more things than just with one person, where Glenn may have only had this one option and now Ben is gone and now he's just like, and I'm out of options.
A very important thing to remember here through all of this is that Glenn is unstable. What may not sound like enough of a motive for a lot of us could totally be enough of a motive for him, whether it's revenge, jealousy, or whatever else, because this is a guy who's seeing rats all the time and
Yeah.
they're not even there. His mind is not working right for whatever reason. It's either that or he's putting on some sort of act so that people
Hmm.
think that he's unstable and don't take him seriously, and he's just trying to like diminish his, I don't know, suspect level because of that.
Well, that's the thing. We saw on the murder board motives, and one
Yeah.
of them was other jealous TV cop, which,
Yes.
would be Scott. But what if it's other jealous stunt person?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. We have already gone back and forth, basically like we're flipping pancakes on who is the actual target here
Yeah.
between Charles and Saz. And really, when you think a lot about it, jealousy can work for either side.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's what makes Glenn an ideal suspect, because he can work for either person as the apparent or attempted victim. And he also works through the lens of he could have done this himself.
Yes.
Or, as you mentioned, he probably had enough money if he was a successful enough stunt person to hire
Mhm.
somebody, even if he was only able to hire them for one occasion.
He is also strong enough to carry Sazz's body.
Yes, like that's another big part of it. And, he's strong, but he's also pretty small. He's pretty quick. Like they showed us that it wasn't great, mind you, but they showed us all that stuff with him doing these stunts on the street and doing like
Yep.
parkour and it kind of signaled to me that okay, he's spry enough that he could maybe move around the building without nobody really seeing what he was up to, because that's been a big problem for me ever since we started to piece this together. How did nobody else notice somebody carrying around a human in a body bag or whatever it was they covered up Sazz? But like, how did they do this?
Also, there are a lot of pig references this season. There
Yeah.
has been a lot of words and references that have been to season 3. We've had the ham radio, we've had
Yeah.
the dazzle mentioned a bunch of times.
Mhm.
There's a ton of pig references, something that Ben referred to himself as with the lipstick
Yes.
in the mirror after he ate all the cookies. So, I mean, why does Paul Rudd have such a huge role this season?
I know.
And why are there so many connections to last season? It just feels like this has to do with what happened to Ben.
It kind of does. It just feels like if you're Paul Rudd, who is a very in-demand actor who can really
Yeah.
do anything at this point in his career, other than just like, oh, he wants to hang out with, Steve Martin and Martin Short, which I understand. Like, don't get me twisted
Who
here.
doesn't?
But it's also just what intrigued you about coming back this season. I certainly think the idea of, oh, you get to play the killer would be a pretty enticing proposition. I don't believe it's, hey, you're going to have an Irish accent now and you're just going to be a part of some random jokes.
No, I think that that's really enticing for last season to be like, hey, you're going to be the victim this season, but next season you're going to be the killer. I mean, we also haven't even spoken about the idea that maybe Glenn is avenging for what happened to Ben on Brazos. And that's why a Sazz or a Charles would be the target, because they were both working on that show at that time.
Yes. And now let's get into the means and also some of the potential holes in here as to why Glenn may not be the killer. Because while there's a ton of evidence that we've already lined up, like there are some things that I'm still having some big problems with. Number one, Glenn would have had to have basically been around the Arconia at the night in which all of this happened. And, he wasn't actively working on the play. So
Nope.
he would have to know that, okay, Sazz was going to be there if Sazz was the target. He would have to sort of watch. He would have to know that everybody was around. I mean, he would make some big assumptions, obviously, that, okay, the trio live at the Arconia. Charles is going to go back to his apartment at some time if he's the target, and he can find a way to make that work. But if Sazz was the target, he would have had to have been watching either her or the building in order to know that she was there.
Yeah, this is where it kind of starts to fall apart. And
Yeah.
especially after this last episode, we have a review up here for you on YouTube if you want to check it out, where we
Yeah.
get into deeper the connection to season 1, and that someone who was involved in season 1 who left Jan that note that says, I'm watching you, has also been part of leaving this same note for the trio. And Glenn wouldn't have known about that.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this, that it's possible that whoever wrote this note and the text message form that was sent to the trio at the end of the last episode, like you even mentioned, that that may not be a threat so much as somebody who is trying to help. So
Yeah.
it could be a different person, but even at the same time, that would sort of mean that whoever is trying to help must have gotten a hand on Sazz's phone at some point in order to do that. And all of that gets really, really confusing, because then we're saying, okay, let's say Glenn killed Sazz, left her phone somewhere for somebody else to pick up. And I know that I know that Glenn's not a professional at this. That might explain why not every finer detail in Charles's apartment was cleaned up if he was the person to transfer the body. But I have a hard time thinking he would have left her phone somewhere for somebody else to get a hold of when that's like such an easy problem for him.
Yeah, I mean, yes, he would be somebody that I would think that would be able to make that shot and would be able to get over there quick enough. And then it also does make sense that if he's not normally a killer, that the cleanup would be, quick and dirty as fast as he's able to get it done and as best as he probably can do it, but he hasn't done it before. So, it's as good as it's going to be.
The other part of this is just the timing of when everything is happening. I mean, if his motive is tied to what happened to Ben, then maybe the timing is perfect. But if it has to do with the movie and trying to stop the movie from happening for whatever reason, how would he know about the movie before the trio? Unless like he's had a conversation with Sazz in the past about it, or he's somehow heard it from the grapevine. But it seems like Bev Mellon and everybody was on the West Coast and Glenn is back on the East Coast. He seems to be very much a New York guy.
Yeah, I mean, him coming on to the movie now makes sense if
Yes.
he's, trying to stop it from happening. But it seems like the motive could just be secrets, that there's something that Sazz wanted to tell Charles. Is it about the movie, some secret that might be coming out that he doesn't know about, that maybe Glenn also knows about? Like, that's the biggest hurdle here, is that we don't know what the motive is because we still don't know who the target is.
Here is the biggest hole that I have in all of this, and I'm talking like a black hole sized hole. The dude got shot. It's just sort of like, it's possible, yes, that you staged this, that this was all an elaborate setup in order to make people think that, okay, you're not responsible for all of
Yes.
it. It's still a lot to sort of put your life in the hands of somebody else and hope that they don't hit you in a spot in which you're gonna die.
Listen, we talked a little bit about
Yeah,
this in the
I
review as
know.
well. For those, I'll use the same example for those of you who have not seen Scream yet. It just came out in like the 90s or
Yeah.
whatever, just a moment for spoilers. But I mean, that movie plus many other movies and TV shows where you have a killer who, at the end of the movie, the two killers are like, all right, you stab me. Okay, I'll stab you.
Yeah.
Hey, we're also victims here, guys. Don't look at us. Look, I'm bleeding out of my shoulder. Like, that is something that absolutely happens, that killers will be like, oh, it couldn't be me. Look, I got shot. Like, absolutely don't look this way.
Okay, you're correct.
And he is a stunt person, so he absolutely would do something like that. We watched him barrel roll over a car
I
into a
know.
trash can. So, I mean, is it that far that he'd be like, yeah, I'll take one. That's fine.
I think a part of my problem, and this is not a problem with Glenn, it's just I keep trying to ascribe to Glenn like things that I would be willing to do or not do. I'm not willing to do this. I'm just putting that out there. I'll be very clear.
I think I can accept more that he would have this done to himself, to be like, hey guys, not me.
Yeah.
More than the other things that you have brought up, which are really good points. Like,
Mhm.
he wouldn't have been in the building. And if he was in the building, somebody would have noticed that there are two Bens walking around. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Okay, here's what I kind of think might have happened with this whole overall picture at this point. This is a very rough theory, but I'm throwing it out there and you guys can tell me if it's wrong in the comments. Okay.
No wrong theories here.
We'll see about that once I'm done with this. But okay, Glenn is the person who moved the body, and we've already went through all the reasons why. Now, the person who actually fired on the other side, I kind of touched on this in the review. I think it's Helga. Now, it would be easy to say that Helga was hired to do this. But now, after we've sort of talked through a lot of this and we've sort of talked through a lot of the training that stunt people go through, what if Helga was just another stunt person?
Yeah,
And somebody
for sure.
who Glenn knew, Glenn had some sort of personal history with, it would kind of erase the idea that, he would have to have money to pay her because, there are some very successful stunt people. We don't
Yes.
know. We don't know the full extent of Glenn's financial situation, but if it's somebody he knows, maybe he doesn't have to pay them or he has to pay them a little bit less. This Helga person may have been monitoring ham radios, looking to get more evidence, looking to sort of figure some things out. That may be why she warned the trio away at some point, because she already knows what she's done and she doesn't necessarily want to have to do it again. But, if the situation arises. But I also think then that Helga could have been the person who then went and did this other incident that has left Glenn in a very bad situation, because as another stunt person, Helga would then know, okay, there's certain places that I can hit Glenn, that he's going to be okay, and it could probably be planned and orchestrated a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, Helga, if she is a stunt person, could have just had a problem with Sazz as well. And that the
Mhm.
two of them were drinking at the bar one night. Was like, you know who I don't like? Sazz. Yeah, me too. Let's do something about it.
Yeah, like this is all really meaty, really fascinating stuff, as long as we just sort of forget all about the note and the season one connections.
Yeah.
That just, this is the hardest season of Only Murders in the Building so far that we've talked about, but it is a lot of fun. That's what we got though
Yeah.
on Glenn as the top suspect. So who is your guys' top suspect? And is it Glenn? Is this Ben as Glenn? Like, what's going on here? Let us know in the comments. And also, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We are very close to 67,000. We appreciate you guys so much
Thank
for
you.
helping us to get there. And if you want to support us further, join our Patreon. We have a link in the description below where we are covering the Penguin exclusively. Thank you guys so much. And we'll see you here next time.